Coming up, college-educated actor, avid writer, and filmmaker Fay Ann Lee picked arts over Wall Street, defied the odds, and made a movie called Falling for Grace. Critics say audiences all over the world are buzzing about it. Gotta like that. Fay Ann Lee grew up in Hong Kong watching American television shows and Doris Day movies with her parents. Her favorite movies were Pretty Woman and Working Girl, and when she finished her U.S. education in finance, she became a working girl in New York City, but not on Wall Street. Fay Ann Lee picked entertainment, hit Broadway and Miss Saigon, but did not park her dream of making her own movie, and like in the movies, dreams come true. Fay Ann Lee is the director, writer, producer, and star in Falling for Grace, and it is my pleasure to welcome Fay Ann Lee to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Thank you very much for having me.
Nice to meet you. Writer, director, producer, and star. What didn't you do in this movie?
I did not. I wasn't the caterer. How's that?
That's very good. But I bet you know how.
No, I have to be honest.
Can't
No,
cook?
I can't cook. Cannot cook.
Not a lick.
Not really.
Well-
I can fry eggs, but that's about it.
Well, you can do other things very well. I loved this movie. It's great. When did you know you had to make it?
Well, I was lucky. I started off on Broadway, and I was getting really pretty good, roles in theater. But as soon as I started to dive into television and film, there were no roles really out there for Asian Americans, and that was when I knew I had to write something and try to work on something that it was a little more substantial. And that was probably about 8 years ago.
Falling for Grace, original title?
East Broadway.
East Broadway, original title. The plot, briefly, if
Sure.
it's not too difficult.
No, it's about this woman from Chinatown. She grew up in New York, Chinatown, who has worked her way up the ladder of life, is now working on Wall Street, very successful investment banker. But what she wants more than anything in the world is to be part of the Upper East Side Manhattan socialite world. And she finally gets invited to a fancy party, and when she gets there, they mistake her as an heiress from Hong Kong.
Grace Tang.
Grace Tang.
From the Tang Dynasty.
That's what they think. They think that she's the heiress of a very famous boutique in Hong Kong called the Shanghai Tang.
I have a catalog from Shanghai Tang. Richard and Bernie, my friends, brought it
Yes.
back from New York. And when I saw it in the movie, I thought, I have the catalog. That's great. Shanghai Tang is also in New York, right?
Yes, yes.
So, back to Grace Tang. So
Yes.
she goes to the She party with the socialites,
Right.
and they, case of mistaken identity and assent. Well, she lets them think.
Right. She tries at first to, she's an honest person, but then when she realizes that, oh, I'm being so accepted here and people like me, and all of a sudden she feels like she's somebody, she decides to run with her new identity for a little while.
Exactly. I got to be somebody for a night.
That's right.
As a young girl, and I know your parents didn't work in a sweatshop or a
They
restaurant.
didn't, no.
But when you were a young girl, did you wonder, or did you want to be a Grace Kelly or
Yeah,
a J-Lo? Or
I think Hollywood and the media, it's so powerful. I grew up in Hong Kong where, 98% of the population is Chinese. But, the images that I saw on TV and all of my favorite shows were always American shows. And so, I always thought that in order to be somebody, you have to be like one of those images from Hollywood, And also growing up in Hong Kong, which is a big city, just like Vancouver, just like, New York City, there are just so many different classes of people, really, And I always thought, that I wasn't rich enough, I wasn't pretty enough, I think it has a lot to do with the media.
Exactly, and a lot of competition. And you wonder as a little girl, I wonder one day if somebody like him, like John F. Kennedy Jr., the late, will marry me.
Right.
Did you run into him when you were in New York?
Yes, well, that was part of the inspiration of this movie. I don't know if you know this,
I
but
did know that.
you did know this. Well, I kept running for a period of time in New York City. I kept running into JFK Jr. everywhere I went. I would say for maybe 3 months, you know. I would be at a bank and he would be at the bank. I would be crossing the streets in New York and he would be on his bike and he would literally stop right in front of my face. I was at a restaurant and I was going into the restaurant and he was coming out of the restaurant and he was having a screaming fight with his girlfriend at the time.
Carolyn or another?
It was somebody else.
Daryl Hannah, one of them.
Yes, it was Daryl Hannah. Oops.
Oops. That's okay. You can tell me.
Yes, but and you know she got into her limousine and he, you know, car service in New York there are a lot of car services and he was on his bike and he pedaled off, you know, and I thought, wow, what does this all mean? Because I was looking for a story too, and the last time I saw him was actually at a tennis club, and he was a member of this very prestigious tennis club, and I was a guest, and I got to observe him for a while. And I saw how people treated him. He seemed like a very, very nice guy, and you know, people treated him a certain way, and so that was what inspired me to come up with this romantic comedy plot. Would somebody like him ever go out with someone who is not from the same class?
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
And if he does, will I ever be accepted in his family?
Right.
The rich marry the rich. Isn't that how it works?
Yes, I mean it works everywhere in the world. It's not just in North America, you know. I mean it was the same in Hong Kong too, and so I really wanted to take the opportunity to, you know, examine sort of a class difference issue as opposed to a racial difference.
Exactly, and that's what you do so well. And the substance of a woman. Just because you grew up with parents who were not wealthy, mom works in a sweatshop,
right?
Dad in the Chinese restaurant, but loving.
Yes.
Love you, embrace you, you make your own way. What part of this movie for you is autobiographical?
I think that the way Grace felt about herself in the film, you know, not having the self-confidence to feel like she was enough, that if she told the truth about who she really was, that people would still embrace her. And I think I grew up very insecure that way. I'm not sure why that is, but I think I think a lot of people feel that way when they grow up, that they're not quite enough, that they want to be somebody else. If they could just, you know, have this one other step in life, that they would be accepted and they would love them, you know, love herself. But I don't think it really works that way. I think that it has to come from within.
For sure.
Yeah.
And if you do arrive, if we can call it arriving, and you're at the top, and you've made it, is it any better than when you were not at the top?
Right.
Big question.
Right. I mean,
what is life really all about?
It seems to me that no matter, you know, where one is in life, unless you really are satisfied with who you are and you like yourself, you're never satisfied. You know, you always want something more. And
when somebody who was born to the manor decides you are way more exciting than his girlfriend who was born to the manor, you who came up the hard way, made your way, that's a Cinderella story.
Yes.
Is there a word for Cinderella in Mandarin?
Well,
Yapan?
Oh, well, Yapan is the name of Cinderella. Yapan is actually the very first Cinderella story, the oldest Cinderella story that has ever been found in the history of this Cinderella story. So, you know, as the Chinese always say, everything comes from the Chinese, and even the Cinderella story. But I never knew this until I started to do research on my script.
I didn't know it till I saw your movie, and we won't give the entire movie away.